Good morning, everybody. Hope you all have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Apologies that this week is just going to be a little short in terms of video content. I did not make one this Monday, but I will be posting for Wednesday as well as Friday, so be on the lookout for that. In addition to that, I did send everybody an email. Be sure to look at that, as that has a lot of different things that we need to be doing this week. I've got some readings that I posted up. David Meerman Scott. There's a lot of videos I want to post that will be coming up later in the week. In addition to that, I've got one more reading about virality and the process of going viral, so videos going viral, tweets going viral, etc. And how do you do it? And why do these things happen the way they do? It's a bit of a tough read for those who don't understand anything about regression analysis, which is a kind of a complex tool in statistics. However, like I said, in the email, the literature review and the discussion is quite easy to manage. So be looking through that. Like I said, I'm going to probably post that either on later today or Wednesday, so just be on the lookout for that. Last thing I'll mention before I get into some of the stuff with the media log, as well as the lecture for today, is be sure to look at the Turn It In assignment. It's a pretty simple one this week, but I do want us to get us started on our media plan book, which will probably consist of 15 pages that kind of acts as your final project. So it's going to be pretty labor intensive. So I want you all to keep on this, keep working, keep looking at the variables, and it is based on a product a client that you select. So again, this can be a local client, this can be a national client, this can be someone you work for, this could be someone you've never even heard of, it could be a startup, it could be something that's lasted for a long time. The possibilities are basically endless, but I do want to check through them because some of them might be a little easier than others, especially, so let's say if you pick a local company, it can be a little bit difficult to recognize some trends without consulting some major areas. So in other words, a lot of the data that we grab, if you're not inherently in the system, so if you're not access to their Facebook, if you're not access to the local market, it can be a little bit difficult to manage a budget and a media schedule. However, if you could choose a national product, it'll be a lot easier in that case. But if you work for the business and they're allowing you to use their data for a brief period of time, that would be preferable in some regards, and that will make that local part easy. And that's what I meant by preferable. It's just that if it's local, like I said, you might want to have a little bit of access to it. Otherwise, the research is going to be a hair bit more difficult. So it's all manageable. So I don't want to deter anybody from a certain client if you really, really want to do something. But again, consult me first, and we'll see if we can work through it. So that's going to be due on Friday. It's just a brief paragraph of who you're doing and why, and may even want to include a little bit of how you're connected. I didn't put that in there, but there's maybe just something to think about in that sense. So that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of things that are due this week. So again, if you have any questions, send me an email. And I'll be happy to respond. I've been getting a lot more emails. There's a lot more forum posts too, which excites me, and I'm really happy that we're getting more progressive as well as progressive. That we're a little bit more active this time, and again, I know that takes time, so feel free to respond and feel free to participate in the forums. This is what they're there for, and I will try to do so myself. There was a few that went over the weekend that I'll try to look at sometime in the next few days. So keep it up. Okay. So I wanted to look a little bit in terms of chapters 5 and 6 of David Meerman Scott. And the biggest thing that I looked at was, especially with chapter 6, I'm not going to talk too much about blogs and wikis and so forth. For the most part, y'all know a lot about them, or if you didn't, by the chapter that we've been reading. However, I did want to talk a lot about audio and video, and then discuss the notion of virality tomorrow, as that's a helpful thing. Again, I do want to promote, as I'm going through this, because I'll kind of bring it up every now and again, is I really was happy with your media logs. I'm glad y'all were so honest about them. I'm glad that a lot of you were really detailed in it. Most of you, in fact, almost all of you, put in the minutes as the total, which really helped me when I was calculating everything. In fact, I got a few statistics that I will share with you in terms of the media usage. And it seemed like of your particular group, radio was used the most per day at 32%. Now, granted, that needs to be taken with a little bit of grain of salt. I did have one outlier, and I didn't want to adjust for the bell curve. That it's just taking too much time at the present moment. But there was a lot of people that participated quite highly in listening to the radio, which was fascinating. And it wasn't only just fascinating for your class. The other class that I teach two media planning classes, one on campus and one online. The other media class had 25% was dedicated towards radio. So that's pretty significant. It's really interesting. Others were TV and video. A lot of you put down that you either stream or you watch cable TV or at least air, which is great. And I thought it was interesting that it seemed to be kind of a split of programs that were nationally syndicated and based on actually watching through like a TV box or antenna. Whereas a lot of you were talking about, well, I was watching Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Go. I think there was one of you who watches Game of Thrones even more than I do, so that's saying something, so good for you. The other one was print, and one thing that I was interested about print, I think I only read two people that were into magazines. And it really goes to show kind of the archaic principle of it, because most people, when they promoted print and talked about their print usage, they'd say that they were reading for a class, which, thank you. I had a lot of you say that you, like read the Bible or read to your children, which is really cool too. Again, but so much was it for utility purposes. And that's something that we probably should just look into, especially when we're looking through our media plan, just of what mediums that we might want to choose, what vehicles we might want to choose. Now, I base this off of how many minutes in a day given 7 hours of sleep. However, I know some of you might look at this video and say, yeah, 7 hours, that's rich. So, look, I know. I don't get a whole lot of sleep either. So, the data needs to be taken lightly, as with any data. I mean, right now I've got it at about 52% of your day is dedicated towards some kind of media. And although, like I said, it's given the sleep patterns of how much you're awake, and again, I don't think that's accurate. I know it's not accurate because, again, I know a lot of you have much lower sleep schedules than the average 7 hours a day. So, but again, that's fine. It's not a huge deal. But it also comes into the stuff that you couldn't report. I know a lot of people that if they had reported communication and computing, their results would probably be much higher. So, it's probably about accurate where it is. And, when I first brought this up to a couple of friends and family about the idea of using 52% of the media, they were like, oh my gosh, are they watching TV that much? And I said, no, they're active. Again, if we account for 32% of radio usage, for instance, you're in your car, you're talking with your kids, so you're using it with utility for your kids to maybe get them to sleep. You're working out. There's just endless variance of things that can be going on. And again, it seemed like music, it was almost in that at least attentional stage, if nothing else, he's taking uses and gratifications into consideration. And what I mean by uses and gratifications is you're using it for utility when it comes to working out, for instance. You have songs that pump you up, or maybe you want something calm and relaxing while you drive, or the very opposite of that. You may want something that's a little bit more hardcore in that case. So these are all part of it. But again, this is really fascinating to me. And again, we can get into a little bit of the demographics based on this and kind of gain observations from there. But again, interesting information. So let's get into, speaking of radio, for instance, let's get into a little bit of audio and video. And I've got a couple of videos that I'm going to be posting here for too long. And, we're really considering this in terms of the essence of emotional appeals and how can we get to our consumer. First and foremost, I'm going to skip over emotional appeals for 1 minute. Even though that's what David Meerman Scott talks about. Video and audio is typically our main factors when it comes to attention, especially, let's say you're rummaging through Facebook, for instance. The one posts that you typically stay on are the ones with some kind of audio or video, typically video. And even more interestingly enough, sometimes we click on a video and kind of go down this rabbit hole of things that we didn't even plan on watching. It just keeps on going. But all the research and eye tracking and visual communication always indicate that it is always through these images at the very least. Video is better, audio is better. That kind of keeps our attention. And so that's, it's important to consider when we're bringing in this kind of thing to marketing. Again, the visual and audio capabilities of it. And David Meerman Scott talks about emotional appeals. And through one thing that we can automatically look at is, back to our chart up here, I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. These ideas of info processing, especially with meaning matching and going into meaning construct as well. In terms of emotional, and emotional comes into play when we're talking about these appeals, for instance. So think James Potter when you're thinking about emotional appeals. Think elaboration, likelihood modeling, which we process things through emotional appeals. They catch our eye, and there's some examples like and one video I'll show is a Chipotle video that's almost pretty sad. And this was actually before their E. coli breakout, so, it's kind of a bummer that they produced this thing about fresh food and they, again, have an E. coli breakout. Or Extra Gum. They've got a cool series of almost bringing in a story of two people getting to know each other, dating, getting married, having children, and it's all based on extra. Well, I don't know if they've gotten to having children yet, but they've certainly gotten to the point of the engagement of the narrative that's given by Extra Gum. And if you can get past the fact that, Extra Gum is kind of hokey in that case, it's actually a really cool narrative, and it's really heartwarming in this case. And so how do we get the most out of those emotional appeals? So clearly they're amazing tools to be able to have, and you want to spur emotion because as you'll see in the reading about virality, is emotions do drive people, and they do get people to have better retention, whether they're bad or good in terms of the positive or negative association with them in terms of valence. That's probably what I wanted to say there. David Meerman Scott, and he'll actually mention this in a lecture, and I'll post this in a couple weeks, is the notion of stock images. And he shows a stock image of a woman working at a desk and says, "Does she work at your company?" And it turned out that like 3 different companies were using the same stock image. So apparently she's working for a lot of people. She's working 3-time jobs for major national, I'm sorry, my ear itches, major national companies. So, again, that seems a little far-fetched. And, what are they? Well, they're free. They're free to use. They're free, open to the public forum all you just need to do is sign up for the service, and you can use these stock images. And I've been watching some national student advertising competitions use stock photos a lot because they don't want to have something that seems inauthentic. They use, and it's professionally done, they'll use stock video, which one university did last year, which was impressive looking until you thought, that looks stock. I think they got that off of the open forum in this case. And do they work? And the biggest appeal for them is why the Associated Press uses these stock images, because they want to have something that's royalty-free, that they're not going to get in trouble for copyright infringement, because especially now that's a big thing. And they have these royalty-free images that work, especially when it comes to reporting on maybe like a baseball or basketball or football or hockey game or whatever. And they've got something from the event, and those are those stock images from that event that they can use. And so for a local newspaper, that's fine. But typically when you're promoting your business, this doesn't work because, again, it seems like it's inauthentic. And we've mentioned before about controlling the narrative and seamless advertising when it comes to social media. Authenticity is key here. And so there's a couple of examples I have. One is from, I believe it's from GQ, that has a couple celebrities like Nick Offerman, Ice Cube, John Cena, and doing the It's Really Me. And they're really funny and very creative. But again, it kind of brings people in to get to know that person a little bit more. But having that with your actual employees, and we're at the age where cameras on our phones are actually extremely high quality from what they used to be. So why not use them? We all think that we have to have these super professional cameras, and those are nice. But if you can't afford them, a phone works just fine. And again, we bring that authentic mindset to the people who work at your company. Why wouldn't you want to have somebody that work at your company? And I just picked this up in the mail this morning. This is Fine and Applied Arts for App State. This is the department I work in. And, they've got like faculty highlights. And these are real pictures of people who work in the department. There's a couple people I actually work with quite consistently. So these are amazing tools, and they're important to have. I also want to bring up another example, and this is someone you just look up on Facebook. You don't have to like them, but it's really cool. It's called Nelson Aerial Productions, and they're a really cool company that do aerial photography, especially around the high country, and especially around Boone. They're actually extremely responsive, so I've messaged them on several occasions while they were live streaming, and they'd respond to me on the stream, which was pretty cool, as well as reply to me on the thread in Facebook. But they have time-lapse videos of certain things. So one I'm just looking at right now is River Street, a sunset. They apparently went to Clemson for the solar eclipse. But they stay in App State a lot, Boone, Banner Elk area, which is pretty cool. And they do some live reports on news. So let's say they take a drone out, and usually when it rains really hard around here, they'll talk about how it's flooding in the mall. And that, given a situation where someone might be wanting to travel to the mall, they could look at this and, again, that authenticity of the high production video that's going on. And drone journalism is blowing up right now. I know that there's someone that's doing a class on that. I'm going a little off topic here. But, again, these are those notions of authenticity. And, again, promoting that narrative. And so speaking of audio and video, there's a cool talk about the Nalgene bottle. And, people trying to destroy the Nalgene bottle. I thought that was a really cool example. And it almost reminded me of that scene. I don't know if y'all have ever seen Napoleon Dynamite, where Kip's trying to break the bowl and runs over it with his truck, and it explodes. But the cool thing about that is, you've got so many challenges to see, if things will break. There's a whole YouTube channel in terms of Will It Blend is an example of that. And well, I think that's kind of dumb. They're still promoting the product that's out there, and that's really interesting. And people do this with other companies as well. I think I mentioned Post-its last week, but Legos are a really cool example of that. One in particular example with Legos was the Mars rover, and someone decided to do a Mars rover Lego construction that, again, they made themselves and submitted to Lego. And what did they do? They accepted it and said this will be part of our new product line. And what a cool opportunity for crowdsourcing. And this is something I haven't used that term before, but it can make a big difference. And so it brings us to maybe a little closer to home point of view of why did you choose App State distance learning? Why did you choose this particular program in general? And it's important to consider some of the reasonings behind it. You know, for me personally, I was a transfer student to Lees-McRae, or I was at Lees-McRae, and I transferred to App State. But you couldn't think of something more authentic for when I went to Lees-McRae first, is because I noticed their ski team. And granted, this was before they had a lot of audio and video. But now, you know, let's say if I knew that somebody wanted to ski around the high country around this area, I could promote a video about the ASU ski team and show, you know, how much fun they have, show the competitiveness, show the camaraderie, and that may want to bring people to this university, hypothetically. You know, I know one person, I probably mentioned this example before, but from Germany, that she picked App State just because it was the first search result that came up. So privacy is a big deal. Authenticity is a big deal. Having that audio and video, this is why we do digital campus tours. And what a great place for App State, because it's just so beautiful here in the high country and here on campus here. And I think if App State were really smart, they would have probably kind of team up with Nelson Aerial Productions and, you know, maybe do some photography in terms of bringing that into the university tour or something like that. They may already do. I don't know. I haven't talked to them or anything. I just, you know, it's just something interesting to consider. And why do people choose here, for instance? We are a major tourist industry here in Banner Elk Boone area. So if you've ever been around this particular spot, I live in Banner Elk, you really notice how many people come here, not only in ski season, which seems logical in that sense. You'd seem like you'd have a lot of people that would come for skiing, and you do. You know, you have your people from Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, South Carolina, you know, all over the Southeast, Tennessee, just because they want a ski weekend and they want some there to take their kids during Martin Luther King weekend or President's Day weekend or over the holidays. It just is very logical in that sense. And we've got, you know, great big mountains that we can ski on. But the other area is we have this contingency of very high class or high on the socioeconomical status demographic of people who come here, for instance. And so why do people choose here? And so these people that typically are from Florida can choose any mountain in the country. And I know I've worked with them not only in the sense of the service industry, but also they have enough that they can probably go anywhere. Why is it that it's here? Now, granted, you could argue proximity, and that's probably part of it. But what is it about the mountains around here? And I know certain companies, take, for example, Eagle's Nest around here, had done some advertising to promote that kind of lifestyle around here. And, you know, again, some major multi-million-dollar homes around here. And David Meerman Scott kind of goes into this a little bit in terms of how we can get into like the tourism industry. And Queensland's best job in the world. Basically hire somebody to live on an island and write about it. And so many people are doing that now, which is interesting. When I saw that example, I was like, the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, there is craft beer, for instance, where they said, your job is to just go around the country and sample craft beer. and it's everywhere. And it's such a smart idea, again, for that authenticity. So, and if you watch some of those videos that go into the virality sense, that go into sharing and authenticity, they're a lot of fun. The good ones are always fun because those are the ones that people want to share. And David Meerman Scott talks about a lot about airlines, and we all know about United for multiple examples, whether it's the United Breaks Guitars video. I don't know if you may have seen that one or not, but more important, or more recent as well as more prominent in this regard is the one of the person being pulled off the plane, and that went viral in this case. But what about Southwest Airlines and their funny flight attendants? People who rap, people who make really funny jokes while they're going through their spiel. And it's all about keeping things light and keeping things fun in this regard. And that can go a long way. It also reminds me, and granted, if I am this airline, which I think they posted about it, there was one video that is a good example of this where the cast of The Lion King Australia got on the plane and started singing from their Broadway production. And that was another video on YouTube. You can look it up, that blew up. And if I'm smart and I'm using that airline, I'm saying what a cool opportunity that we had this particular cast on our plane. We liked having them here. There's all these instances of, if you're paying close attention, the things that are being shared through crowdsourcing can be brought into your narrative. And you can kind of do some cool corporate social responsibility. So if I'm this airline, not only do I kind of give a cool, quick tweet of sharing this video and say, hey, we are so happy to have you on board. It's awesome that our flight attendants came in, took your camera, and started showing the whole cast without even asking. I mean, it was really cool how it's just so seamless in this regard. Was it planned? I'm just kidding. But, I'd also go into, maybe giving them a freebie in terms of maybe a free discounted flight or something along those regards to kind of draw some good CSR in there as well. And so keep things light and keep things fun. So that's a lot of promoting in this video. So, but what about audio? And audio in this case, 25, again, we mentioned, I was going to say 25, but I was wrong. 32% is going through these radio and podcasts here. And we use things through iTunes, YouTube. I have one in particular that I listen to. It's the Steve Dangle podcast. He's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, but he's really good about just updating things in hockey, and I enjoyed listening to it. There's actually a really cool app if you're really interested in something in podcasts. It's called Stitcher, Stitcher, and that you can get a lot of podcasts through that one as well. And it's a really cool app if you're interested in that kind of thing. But there's so much information through this notion of Stitcher. David Meerman Scott talks a lot about the notion of artists, like music artists. They talk a lot about the Grammar Girl was one that he brought up, which, by the way, that's a really cool form with Grammar Girl, not only in the audio sense, but going through it myself when I was writing my dissertation really helped, because we're all bad writers. We're never really good at writing. We just kind of progressively get a little bit better. But again, this goes into this notion of bringing the personnel into the fold. If you ever listen to a radio station, you might recognize that, maybe they have something that had Keith Urban saying how much they love this particular radio station. And it may just be a small blip of them saying, these are the country stars that listen to our radio station. And they just go one by one. And they have just a small recording of their voice. And you sit there and like, why do they do that? Same thing with, if you've ever seen the movie That Thing You Do, where all they had was the band members saying hi on air. It was them, but again, how much exposure did you really get? But it's that notion that we're really interested in terms of getting to know those people. And that increases that area of parasocial interaction, parasocial relationships, presence, and presence, as in telepresence, not as in Christmas presents. I don't know why that needed to be distinguished. But again, these are those notions of audio and video that make such a big difference and can be such a big tool for authenticity, especially on social media. I'm not going to get into the news releases. I'll let you look at that on your own. There is new rules of news releases. That's typically kind of a more on the PR side, but take a look through it. And again, good PR and good marketing do trend together really well in that regard. So again, kind of wrapping things up today because I know I'm running a little over in my normal time period. Make sure to be looking into picking your particular product or client that you want to represent. If you don't have one, I can definitely find one for you. It will make things a little easier if you're just really not sure. But if you do know what you're doing and you really want to use a particular product and so forth, please let me know. We'll approve it and we'll go from there. Like I said, it is on Turn It In on your ASU Learn. I hope it works. It was kind of a nightmare last week in terms of trying to get y'all to, well, I'm saying it like y'all aren't doing your work. Y'all are doing your work. But to receive it. So let's hope that it works. If it doesn't, just keep emailing it to me and I'll manually put it in. So no big deal either way. So I think that's it for now. Like I said, if you have any questions about the assignment, let me know, or the readings, let me know. And I'll post a forum up on Wednesday. So you all have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.